The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to tonight's presentation, Easy Ways to Get More Patients in Your Optometry Practice. I'm Marnie Anderson. I'm part of the ECP Services and Product team here at Revolution EHR. Before we start and introduce Dr. Mighty, I did want to do a bit of housekeeping. We will be recording tonight's presentation for later on-demand viewing, and we will have time for Q&A following the presentation, but we do encourage you to submit questions throughout as they come to you. So tonight we are excited to have Dr. Sathi Maiti joining us to discuss her experience and expertise. Dr. Maiti graduated from the UC Berkeley School of Optometry in 2014. She grew up in Eastern Washington and now practices at a few different locations in Seattle, Washington, including a private practice and a specialty dry eye practice. She's active in her local optometry community. She's a member of the Optometric Physicians of Washington's Diversity, Inclusion, Access Task Force, volunteers through a number of organizations like Vosh Northwest and Public Health Reserve Corps, and she enjoys mentoring high school students interested in eye care. Dr. Mighty is on the board of the editorial board of Eyes on Eye Care and is a sub-investigator on a number of clinical trials related to dry eye. In her free time, she likes to spend time with her husband, a brewer, and her dachshund mix, as well as making both eye and non-eye related art through drawing, crochet, and embroidery. She's very active in the eye care Instagram community, and you should follow her at Dr. Mighty's Eyeballs and Stuff. Dr. Mighty, welcome. Can you tell us a little about your optometry practice and what a typical day looks like in terms of patient volume?
Thank you so much. Forward my slide there. Hi, thank you so much, Marnie, for having me, and to Revolution EHR, as well as Eyes on Eye Care for setting up this event. I'm very excited to present on this topic, all about getting bodies into those chairs, easy ways to get more patients into your practice. This is kind of a never-ending thing that we always are trying to figure out, how to fill our slots, keep ourselves busy. And I think particularly now with COVID more than ever. So I figured I'd start a little bit talking about my practices. I actually work at a few different places, including private practice, as well as kind of a specialty dry eye clinic. But thought I would focus today a little bit more on kind of just the typical private practice that I work at, because I think that is kind of the type of practice most of us work at, where we're doing things, primarily comprehensive eye exams, urgent care, pre-post-surgical care, kind of what you think of when you think of an optometry practice. One of the main practices that I'm at that uses Rev, we have 3 doctors, as well as a bunch of supporting staff, quite a few opticians, a clinic director, techs, lab staff. And we also have a really big optical. Optical is a big part of our practice. We try to offer really interesting, unique frames that people can't get in other places. But we also are really focused on, providing quality eye care. We have a really diverse patient population. We take insurance, across the board, from Medicaid, up to the really fancy plans, that the big tech companies in Seattle take. So, our range of patients goes all the way from people that are unhoused to, really prominent local business owners or tech workers. And so we have a huge range of people that we're trying to serve. We're also located in a neighborhood. So Seattle, has a bunch of different neighborhoods where people live, and they have each one has their sort of retail core. But we really try to be part of the neighborhood, because the majority of our patients, they actually sort of live near us more than work near us. And so, we want to be sort of part of their neighborhood, part of their community. We're also, the neighborhood that we're in is the historically LGBTQ neighborhood in Seattle. And so being, part of that, having an open, accessible, non-judgmental clinic is really important to us. We want people to feel like they can come and be who they are with us, and we're not going to judge them. We're not going to call them by a name they don't want to be called. We really take, listening to our patients, caring about what they care about very importantly. So, as far as like exams and scheduling and stuff like that, pre-COVID, to be honest, we were doing awesome. We were doing 30-minute exam slots, very typical, I think, for a lot of practices. We had techs working up our patients, would throw in, some follow-ups, urgent care visits in between, would stack patients, while one was dilating, we'd work up another one, typically had, more than, I'd say 2 doctors a day most of the time. So we were a pretty busy, bustling clinic with, lots of people coming in and out. People would hang out, look at frames for a while, and then of course last year, as we all know, COVID happened, and COVID really changed things. Of course, we ended up actually closing to routine care for a while back in March last year. But one thing we did that I think was really important was we never shut down completely. So we made sure that our patients knew that we were still there for them. We hadn't completely abandoned them. We still had staff working so that patients could order contacts, order glasses. We had set up a really cool remote styling, frame styling system so people could still virtually try on glasses and order new frames. Our owner doc was available for emergency care, and triaging any issues people had. So patients could still access us very easily through our website, which we always kept updated. And so they knew, we were still there for them. And I think that was really important because I think, there have been some other places that maybe didn't do that, and patients felt like, where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do? And I feel like they knew they could kind of count on us to still be there for them. So, once we ended up reopening back last June, things were totally different. We took safety protocols very seriously. We lengthened our appointment slots. We basically doubled our appointment slot length. And so we went from 30-minute exams to 60-minute exams. We stopped having techs work up patients. So the doc did the whole exam to kind of limit, number of interactions between people. And we stopped stacking. We were really limiting how many people were coming in and out, which basically, also halved the amount of income we could make per day. We've kind of since split the difference a little bit and are back down to 45-minute slots, and maybe throwing in a couple urgent cares now, sometimes having more than one doctor. So it's a little bit better than it was right initially when we reopened, but we still don't have the same potential to see as many patients per day as we did pre-COVID. And so, the importance of filling those slots and, decreasing the number of no-shows and keeping our docs busy, it's gone up so much for all of us, because even though now we can't make as much per day, the cost of running the practice certainly hasn't gone down at all. If anything, it's potentially gone up with all the PPE we've had to buy, and all the air filters and everything like that. And so it's become, much more important, probably more than ever, to kind of keep, get butts in those chairs and keep our docs busy. And so, when we think about how to fill those slots, there's kind of 2 main populations we want to focus on, right? There's our existing patients that are already coming in, and then our new patients, that we want to entice to come and see us. And so I'm going to focus on our existing patients because that's sort of the easiest demographic. We've already got their attention. What can we do to keep them coming in or help advertise for us? And you kind of want to be able to use all the systems that you have to help with that. And so that's kind of what the main talk will be on. How do we get, these existing patients to come in as well as new ones? So initially focusing on our existing patients, patient communication is so important, and doing things like using the systems that we have for things like pre-appointing is awesome. I think if you can pre-appoint patients for their exams in a year, that is, you know, you definitely should. We actually don't do this in my clinics. We just don't set our doctors' schedules enough in advance to know if someone will be available a year from now. But if you work in a clinic, that has enough doctors where certain slots will be available a year from now, I think absolutely you should do pre-appointing. Particularly if you're a new clinic and you're trying to build up the practice. I think this is something, that our colleagues, our dentist colleagues do really well. Every dentist I've gone to has pre-appointed me, and so I always show up for my appointments. But because we don't pre-appoint, what I do try to do is at the end of the exam, I do always try to tell patients exactly when I want to see them back. So, if it's a comprehensive exam, say, okay, Jeff, in a year, I want to see you back for your regular exam, or want to see you back in 3 months for your glaucoma workup. So patients know exactly when you want to see them. And then you could use the recall system, to send that reminder in a year or in 3 months. And so, recall, I think everyone should do. Patients really depend on recall. Like, we don't remember that we need to do exams every year unless there's some kind of system reminding us. And so systems like RevConnect that do, appointment reminders and recall make it super easy. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about that later. But I think, any kind of integrated system you can use that already has all your patients in the system and can easily send reminders and messages is so important. And, the communication that I was talking about is also important in terms of preventing no-shows, and filling those last-minute cancellations. This is always such a big problem, is you think the schedules fill, and then all of a sudden, someone no-shows or they cancel right before their exam. It's like, how do we stop this from happening? And of course, appointment reminders are super important. Systems like RevConnect make it really easy to send text or email reminders, and you can set exactly when you want them to send out. If you want to do it a week before, a day before, an hour before, you can customize it, which is awesome. If people want text versus email, or if a certain patient is going to need, extra reminders, you can send just that patient extra reminders. And then also, considering something like an online intake form, like Rev Intake, we have found in our clinic to be awesome. I love online intake. It really cuts down on, one time in the clinic. We all have those patients that come in, they take like 15 minutes to fill out their paperwork. Then the tech takes like 10 minutes to work them up. And then all of a sudden you only have, 5 minutes left in the slot to do your exam. And so online intake is great because patients fill it out in advance. You can look at it, before they come in, which I really like as a doctor too, because I can sort of look at all the intakes at the beginning of the day and kind of have an idea of what my schedule is going to look like. And we found that if people fill out that intake form in advance, they almost always show up for their appointment. Rarely, unless some kind of emergency comes up, will they not show. And then the other good thing is if you come in the morning and you see a couple patients haven't done their online intake, then you can send them that reminder and say, hey, are you still coming in for your appointment? And then they'll either remember to do the intake, or they'll go ahead and cancel. And then maybe you'll have enough time, to fill the slot with someone else. And that comes with my next point, which is trying to keep a cancellation list, is what we call it, of patients that maybe have exams scheduled, in a couple weeks out, but would maybe like to come in sooner. And you can say, hey, we'll let you know if a slot opens up same day, and you can just pop in really quick. So if you've got that list ready of people to contact, someone that lives around the corner or something that you can just call up and say, you can get here in 10 minutes, we've got a slot for you, can be really useful to fill those last minute cancellations. And then of course, if you have, say, quite a few slots open per day, I think it's a good idea to advertise that, on your social media, on your Instagram or whatever. Say, hey, we've got, open slots today if you want to come in. if you have the ability to use something like a sandwich board out on the sidewalk in front of your office to advertise, like, we have exams today. And sandwich boards, I think, are awesome to advertise anything, you know, even frames or events or anything that you're having, to kind of entice people to come in is always great. But kind of going, you know, back to that patient communication, aside from just no-shows, you know, you want to make sure that your existing patients are hearing from you, that they know what you're doing, that they feel like you care about them, and you can use messaging systems to communicate, you know, not just the appointment or recall reminders, but for things like birthday messages, you know, optical order status, any campaigns or anything that you want to run in terms of patient information, things like letting patients know what your new hours are during COVID, or, you know, if you have a new frame line, or anything like that. And I'm going to show a little bit about Rev Connect here and things that I like about it. So this is one of the things that comes up if you log into Rev Connect, that shows, you know, different things like appointment reminders, recall, any sort of communication. And what's really nice about it is they have sort of preset templates you can use. So it'll auto send, you know, reminders in 1 day or 9 days or 8 days or whatever. And you can use the preset template, or you can customize it. So it's really nice if you kind of don't want to have to think about it that much, and you just want to use the research that Rev did to, you know, figure out what the, you know, best times to send out things are. You can use the templates. If you want to customize stuff, you can customize it as much as you want. And other things that I think are really great about it are they have these sort of metrics too that you can look at. So you can see, you know, exactly the success rate of the different messages that you're sending out, you know, 87%. You can also see like exactly who opened up your messages and then what action they made after that. So did they open up your message and then go and make an appointment? Or did they open up your message and then opt out of all messages? And then you kind of know, you know, what communication are we doing that's working, and what communication are we doing, you know, that's not working. And that'll help you customize down the road, you know, and you can use these campaigns for anything, you know, any information you want to share. If you want to do little blogs about, you know, topics in eye care that are, you know, really popular, if you want to advertise, you know, new frames that are coming out or a new staff member. And what's really cool is you can really customize who gets the messages as well. So you can send messages to just people in your system that have contact lens prescriptions, or just people that had exams, you know, within a certain period of time, or patients, you know, with dry eye that you want to focus on with certain messaging. You can do that. So you can really customize it, which is really cool, because I think the kind of big issue with this type of patient communication is you don't want it to become spam, right? It's like we want people to read the messages that they're getting and not just ignore them. And so it's always kind of a fine line between like getting useful information out, making sure it's something people actually want to read and that they're not annoyed by you sending them, you know, a message every week or whatever like that. So keeping that patient communication is really great. And that way patients, you know what you're doing, and they can also communicate back with you, which is awesome. So gonna focus next a little bit on, you know, not just getting patients in to your office, but how to use existing patients to market for you. You know, as we know, word of mouth marketing is still the most effective marketing out there. You know, even if you do all this fancy stuff with your website and stuff that we'll talk about, it's still people having a good experience and then telling other people that really is going to get people to come in. And so, you know, you have to make sure that you're giving them a good experience in office. So, you know, all that communication we were talking about, it should be really seamless and easy for your patient. They should feel like they can contact you easily and it's not a pain. They can get a hold of someone really easily. They should know, you know, what specialties you offer and stuff like that without having to try too hard to get that information, you know. And we used to do a lot of things to make our practice a place that people wanted to gather in, pre-COVID. So we would throw a lot of events, to encourage people to come in, have some punch or drink so people could just kind of hang out and feel like we were a gathering place more than, a business. We wanted to be a place people felt comfortable, that they could just drop in and hang out. That's of course been a little bit tougher during COVID, of course, but we've still tried to make the experience fun. We set up a really cool tent outside our practice where people can try on frames outside safely, and put in the effort to make it a really aesthetically pleasing tent that actually has sort of the practice colors and logo and stuff on it instead of one of those just ugly, white plastic ones, to make it still, a fun, pleasant experience for people when they're trying on frames. And of course you want to make sort of every aspect of their appointment fun and easy, so that they're enjoying their time there. And of course, asking for reviews can be really useful. Online reviews are still so important. People always are going to read your online reviews before they come in to see you. So if you have a patient that, says, hey, I had a really good experience here, consider asking them before they leave to write a review for you, or you could even send them a message through the system to ask for reviews. I'll oftentimes even just hand those patients my business card and say, hey, tell your family and friends to come here. We're always happy to see anyone that and of course you want to, make sure that your practice looks good. Make sure that it's aesthetically pleasing, and that people walk by and they want to come in and look at it, and encouraging your patients to use social media to kind of advertise for you is great. Making sure your optical and your practice looks nice so that there's good backgrounds for photos. Your frame should look nice so that if, patients take photos in front of them, they can post them online. Encourage them to tag your practice. Hopefully you have your own social media for your practice, and then engage with them, share their posts if they allow it. Tell them how great they look in the frames, make it a communication system, so that they know that you're participating as well and that you're really glad that they like what they got. And of course, the most important aspect of getting existing patients to market for you, and I think we all know this, is just giving them the best experience when they come in. It's just taking care of them, being a good doctor, listening to them, and I think this is actually for us really the most important thing. I don't actually necessarily always ask for reviews, but I just try to provide my best honest care that I can for patients, and to get to know them too. And actually I think the slightly longer appointment slots that we have has actually really helped with that, where I feel like I have a little bit more time to talk to patients. Now that we don't stack patients during dilation, I can kind of spend that time now going in a little bit more detail, maybe about their dry eye or going over lens options for them. And I try to get to know my patients really beyond just what's going on with their eyeballs, right? Always try to put little notes in the EMR about patients, what their jobs are, what their hobbies are, how many kids they have, that kind of thing. So when they come back each year, you kind of remember. I find patients really appreciate that, you know who they are as a person, beyond just what's going on with their eye health or prescription. It always sort of takes me back to this quote that I think about, which is that, no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And so patients need to know that you care about them as a person before they're going to care about what you have to say about their eye health. And I think this comes up a lot, where some of the best diagnosticians that I know, really good optometrists, still sometimes look at their patients sort of like clinical cases, and they do a really good job at diagnosing and treating their problems, but they don't do a good job of sort of thinking about it from the patient perspective, and realizing how scary eye problems can be for people, and being understanding, So, try to do all of those things, of course, make it a good experience. Let patients know that you're always available for them for emergency care. If they have any issues, post their exam, that you are always there and available for them. They can come back anytime. They're not a burden to you if they're coming in and they have issues with their glasses or something like that. You are here to help them. You want them to see, and you're always happy to have them come back in. And so let's see. So another thing that you could consider doing as well is actually running patient surveys. So you could use RevConnect to do that. And I think particularly for like new practices, this is good to really highlight, areas that maybe you think are fine, that maybe need some work. So patient surveys can be really useful for that. All right. So let's go ahead and move on to new patients next. So I think new patients are actually probably the harder demographic to convince. Existing patients is easy. Like, they already like you, so you can get them to come back. But how do you convince new patients to pick your practice, over another practice? Particularly if you, like the practice I work at, we're very typical private practice. We offer a lot of the same things that other practices offer. So how do you convince new patients to come to see you instead of someone else? And so, there's kind of a few different ways to go about that. Of course, you want to do practice marketing. You've got to know the demographics of your practice and the area that your practice is in. You can do that through looking at your current demographics in your rev of like ages of your patients, what insurances people have, all of that to know how to focus your marketing. Because if you have kind of, a general younger, like tech heavy practice, you're going to kind of want to make sure you're doing those things. If you maybe have an older patient practice, you want to make sure that maybe you aren't using, all the online intake and stuff like that. Maybe you want to make sure people can then do their paper intake and take their time and stuff like that. But, there's so many ways that you want to convince people to come into your practice. And I think one of the first things is just the aesthetics of your practice. It's got to look inviting. People walking by should want to come in, like look at it from the outside, make sure, your signs are enticing people, that they can see frames, the windows should be clean, like all of that stuff. If you are pretty into the optical side of your practice, like we are, of course, wear your eyewear. Encourage your staff to wear it. You should be giving your staff free eyewear because it's free advertising. I don't like to force staff to wear glasses, but they should want to. Like, you should have frames that they want to wear. Because so much of the time, that's how I get people to come see me, is they see my glasses and they comment on them and I hand them a business card, and they come in. So always carry those business cards. If you hear someone that needs an eye doctor, pass those out everywhere you can. I had talked a little bit about throwing events and stuff before. Again, with COVID, that's a little bit tough right now, but we definitely did this pre-COVID. And I think, as things open back up, this will be an area to really focus on again. Once we can throw events again, people are going to want to come to them. And so, get ready to kind of throw events showing that, you're expanding your hours, you're offering new things. Hopefully when we don't have to wear masks anymore, you can do those kind of events. But we would do things like, trunk shows, of course, anything introducing, new products or, procedures or anything that you're doing. Things like contests and raffles, people love that stuff. So, anything to encourage people to come in. Other things like, advertising yourself through local news or magazine interviews. If you are able to connect, with local media, try to do that. Try to get featured if you can, if you're a newer practice. We've been really lucky that we actually have hired a local designer to design, kind of the architecture parts of our practice. And so, we've even gotten featured in sort of local design publications that kind of encourage people to come to practice just for that. And then doing things like making lookbooks with your frames and kind of the vibe of your practice, anything sort of creative like that can be really great. Of course, other than sort of actual in-person things, of course, online marketing is super important. Like, we know people are always going to look for your website before you come in. So your online presence is super important. No one uses the phone book anymore. They're Googling practices, they're Googling eye doctors. So, you definitely want to have a really good website, a good aesthetically pleasing, easy to navigate website, particularly on smartphones. Most people use their smartphones to look up stuff. There are so many optometry practices that I've looked up that have just horrible to navigate websites that are really ugly. You can't even figure out, how to look up any of the information, and it just looks super generic. So try to, maybe hire someone to help you with that. Personalize it so it's not just that same generic format that everyone has. And personalize it, post bios and photos of your staff on the website. Make your practice seem like a fun place that people want to come hang out, because if people can see that you enjoy being there, then they're going to want to come in as well. And so certainly leverage things like Google search engine optimization, all those Google analytics and stuff that you can do to get demographic info on who's looking at your website and stuff. Of course, use that as much as you can. And then beyond your website, make sure you're looking at your entire online presence. So check all the review websites to see what your reviews are looking like. If you don't have a bunch, consider asking patients to post reviews. Be smart about dealing with potentially negative reviews. You don't want your response to turn people off more than maybe not responding to them. And then, also consider like your personal social media. If it is public, make sure that, you're posting things that you'd be okay with your patients seeing. And that goes for, your staff as well. If you post on blogs or, write articles for optometry, consider featuring those on your website or making sure that they, show up kind of high on the list there. And beyond that, of course, using social media for your practice. So if you have, a younger demographic that uses a lot of social media, I think you should absolutely have practice social media accounts. You don't necessarily need to have a ton of them. Like, we just focus on Instagram for ours, but you could consider, Facebook, or even if you're like into the TikTok dances and YouTube and stuff like that, definitely get into that. This really helps you connect with your patients, and they see you as just an actual person, that the people in your practice are people that are having a good time. You can share new frames when they come in, or highlight staff and what's going on in your staff's life, advertise any new specialties that you're offering, or even do little posts with clinical tips. It's allergy season right now, I can talk about that. And definitely, I'd say, be authentic and personal with your social media. So post actual photos of your staff in your office. Don't use stock photos or generic, kind of posts. Like, make it personal. And you can also consider doing things like, the raffles or giveaways and stuff that I was talking about in person online as well. People, like I said, people love raffles and giveaways. So if that encourages people to follow you, definitely do that. And even consider, something like using sponsored advertising can be really effective. So of course, beyond, sort of online marketing and stuff like that, also, of course, just connections and networking with other health professionals is so important, and I think particularly with other eye care professionals. Some doctors really have this competitive mentality where they don't want other doctors to know what they're doing because they feel like, oh, we're all competing for the same patients. And I think that's sort of a bad mentality to have. Really, you should think about it like we're all working together to take care of the people in our community, and we all have kind of different ways that we can take care of people differently. So, I may offer a specialty that my colleague down the street doesn't, and we can work together to take care of people. So, be active in your local societies. Make sure other eye care professionals in the community know who you are, that they know what you offer. If you do specialty care like specialty contacts or dry eye, if you have, kind of special hours, like maybe you do appointments, really late or early. If you take kind of more unusual insurance plans, like we take Medicaid. So a lot of the time people know, hey, we don't take Medicaid, so we can't take care of you, but I have a good friend, across town that I know takes it, that I can trust will take care of you. And so, they'll send patients to you that way. So, don't be afraid to get along with your other eye doctors, so that we can take care of everyone together. And, consider using really good referral systems like RevDirect. Referring is sort of this area that I think we all really struggle with, where we're still potentially faxing referrals to places, things get lost, patients don't get, contacted, things fall through the cracks all the time. And I think this is an area that patients are also quite dissatisfied with. They want continuity of care. If you're referring someone, they want to know that that doctor knows what you send them, that you're going to get a report back. So using a system like that can be really great. If you are a specialty clinic, make sure that when you get a referral, that you're sending notes back, to whoever referred to you, that you're not poaching the patient, that, we're keeping a collegiate, relationship there. And of course, think about reaching out to other types of health professionals, urgent cares, primary care doctors, endocrinologists, pediatricians. Let them know, you do pediatric exams, you do diabetic exams, you manage glaucoma, you're happy to take those emergency eye visits, because a lot of the time they don't know. A lot of other doctors don't know what we do, and it's kind of up to us to let them know. So that goes along with like handing everyone your business card, let them all know, offer to show them around your clinic, all of those kinds of things. And then also refer patients back and forth to them too. So, the relationship goes both ways. So, and then kind of the last thing that I recommend is, of course, that community outreach. We're talking about making sure your practice is part of the community. So, do things like donate and volunteer. I and one of the other doctors in my practice, we mentor local high school students. Myself and a lot of the opticians, we volunteer at a lot of different eye care volunteering events in the community, doing free eye exams and glasses and stuff like that. So it's really good to just get yourself out there, because a lot of the times the patients going to these kind of free clinics, do sometimes also have insurance, or maybe they're getting one pair there, but they actually will come into your office to get another pair. Or if you take good care of them at an event like that, they will tell other people about you and your practice. So, it's not just about giving back. You can also kind of help your practice, and also just sort of, garner a general feeling of goodwill towards you and your practice, that you care about the people around you. You love eye care. You want to spread eye care and take care of all the people around you. You can also consider like sponsoring sports leagues or, fun runs and events like that. Donate to worthy causes, like eye care causes, and you can advertise that in your practice, what you're doing. Take part in programs like contact lens recycling. People really love that, help the environment a little bit. And of course, advertise all these things that you're doing so patients know, and they can feel good about the places, that they're coming to. So in general, always try to remember, what do you offer that other practices don't? Even if you're the most standard private practice, there's something about you that's different than the other practices out there. Do you do any specialty care? You know, all the standard specialties like UV, dry eye, specialty contacts, peds. Let every other eye doctor you know that you provide this stuff so that they can easily refer to you. Make referring to you very easy if you can. Do you have unusual hours, like I mentioned before? Do you do appointments on Sundays? Are you open really late or early? Do you or your staff speak any other languages that would, help patients come in? I had worked in an office that had an optician that spoke ASL, which was awesome. We had a lot of deaf and hard of hearing patients that liked to come to us because they knew that we could take care of them without it, being a whole thing. Also, do you take less common insurance plans like Medicaid or offer glasses, under certain programs? Do you have something like an in-house lab where you can, make glasses quicker than other places? Do you have really good opticians that can do more complicated repairs, or adjustments? Do you offer unique products or frames, uncommon brands that people can't find anywhere else? Vintage frames, we sell a bunch of vintage frames. Do you do things like safety glasses, sports, goggles, anything that maybe another practice doesn't have, but that they would be willing to send to you if they have a patient that comes by? And then even just advertising little things, like we advertise that we don't do the ear puff, we don't do NCT, we've never done NCT. This still, for some reason, blows patients' minds because they're all traumatized by it. So even just little things like that can really kind of convince people to want to come see you. And so just what I always say, just tell everyone what you do and who you are to encourage them to come in and see you. And kind of lastly, overall, you just want to think about like every step from the patient's perspective of your eye exam, from how are they finding you? How are they navigating your website and the internet? What is their scheduling appointment experience? What's the intake check-in? Is it complicated? Is it simple? What is the pre-testing like? What is their interactions with the front staff and all of your staff like? Is your staff educated about all the aspects of your practice? They should be, so that they can kind of ask anyone stuff and people should know what's going on. Are they having, a thorough exam? Do you have enough time to do everything that they need to? Are you listening to them, taking care of them, onto the optical? And then, like we said, with referring, making sure you're following up and keeping those referring systems not too complicated and not letting things fall through the cracks. And then, of course, follow-up care, and all the communication that we talked about before. Communication we should make as easy for patients as possible. It should be super easy for them to message you or email you or whatever with anything that they need. And kind of lastly, just like, what does your practice look and feel like? Like we go into our practices every day and we don't look at the details. We don't notice, the like big paint chip on the wall or whatever, or that the bathroom's kind of dirty or something. And so one thing I often recommend is like have a good friend or family member and really like come in, go through all the steps of the process and then let you know their honest feedback about what's going on so that you can fix things. And then also consider running those patient surveys to get more people to let you know what you need to do. But overall, what we're trying to do is just set up our practices so that they're friendly and inviting, kind of creating a general feeling of goodwill towards your practice so that people want to come in, they want to spend time with you, they want to encourage their friends to come see you. And so anything that we can do to make that simple for patients through communication systems and stuff like that is just going to make your practice successful and easy for patients to come and find you. So that's pretty much it for what I had today. Give patients a reason to choose you and provide an easy, stress-free experience worthy of them telling everyone that they know about you. So certainly if Marnie has anything else to talk about specifically about, the different REV systems, like Connect, Direct, and Intake, I think are all awesome. If anyone has any questions or wants to message me, feel free to email me at sathi.mighty@gmail.com or follow me on Instagram. I'm quite responsive on Instagram at Dr. Mighty's Eyeballs and stuff.
Thanks so much, Dr. Mighty. I do have a few questions that came in. If you have a couple minutes, we can go over those.
Sure.
Okay. One of the first ones was they were asking which system you implemented for the virtual try-on of frames.
So we didn't use a website for it. And actually, the opticians in our practice would know more about this, but we actually set up a system where people took photos of their face and they basically put a credit card on their face so that we could exactly print out photos in the proper size to match up. So when it printed, it would be exactly the size of their face. And then what they actually did was poke little holes in the piece of paper right here, and then would put frames on the piece of paper and then show the patient virtually. So it was kind of like a crafty hands-on thing, but it gave people really a good idea what the actual frame would look like on their face. So yeah, unfortunately not one of the online systems. I know there are quite a few, but I can't really speak on those, unfortunately.
Well, I kind of like that, the low-tech crafty way myself. That's,
yeah, and it worked,
interesting.
you know?
Yeah, and it's their face. It's good.
Exactly.
The next question was about reviews and like how many is a good target? 50, 100, 300? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is definitely going to vary depending on how old your practice is. You know, I certainly think, right, the more the better. Obviously, new practice isn't going to have as many, but I get kind of suspicious if a practice has been around for a long time. You know, maybe they only have like 5 reviews. I feel like you should have, you know, at least like 50 or more reviews if you've been around for a while, just so people get an idea of what a wide range of people think of your practice. So, you know, it doesn't have to be a ton, but you definitely want to make sure it's more than just a few people. And yeah, certainly I don't think there's an upper limit.
That makes sense. And you had mentioned too that it's good to respond to reviews that might not be so happy before
Right.
someone else sees them. We did have a question about Rev Connect and if it's included in Revolution EHR. It is an added feature. We can always talk about that offline if you have questions. And I am going to just put a poll up, speaking of that, because this was really about, you know, educating everyone. But if there is anything that you want to learn more about, please let us know. I'm going to leave the poll up for just a few seconds. And I'm going to thank you again, Dr. Mighty, for joining us. If I'm ever in the Seattle area, you never know, I might be, depends on where the kid goes to school, I'm definitely going to come visit. Looks like we got a couple more people in the poll. Okay, we'll close the poll, but you know how to reach us at Revolution and Dr. Mighty. And thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. Have a great night, great rest of your week, and a great weekend.
Thank you.